Each and every one should understand that ecosystems forms the fabric that continues to support all life on Earth. This is a very simple message, but very difficult to understand and very difficult to convey to the people on this Earth, on this planet. And they should realize that the healthier they are, the healthier the planet and its people would be. And I think this is the key message that not only this conference, but the whole narrative, the whole work on environmental education needs to focus on the next 10 years.
Obviously, when I talk to people like you, it does look like that. But how many of your friends, how many of your other colleagues who are not necessarily part of YRE or another program, how conscious are they on the environment? I would think that they are much more conscious than when I went to school, for instance. That was a long time ago, but things like that. So I think it's working, but we need to make it work much faster.
So since teachers are teaching their own subjects, so they are missing out a lot of things. For example, when we talk about environmental education or any environmental issue for that matter, so what happens is that we cannot talk only about the science. It has to be necessarily interdisciplinary.
So the rapid shift to distance learning has also highlighted a persistent digital device in terms of connectivity, infrastructure, ability to engage with technology also.
And what makes the role of youth crucial is that we have 1.8 billion youth, the largest generation of youth in the history, who are calling this world their home. And they are the one who would feel the impact of degradation and deteriorating ecosystem the most.
And these 10 principles would guide action over the decade in ecosystem restoration. And of course, it is time to act, but it is also time to get restoration right. And that's something important. We do a lot of restoration, but what actions we take need to be long-term, need to be looked at in a way where whether they are sustainable, whether they are looking at livelihood issues, whether they are inclusive, and all of that is part of these principles.
You know, the key things for us as individuals, I think, are to deeply understand the issues and not be afraid to discuss some of the harder ones, like unsustainable population growth, because it's a major factor that leads to our significant unsustainable life that we all have across the planet with 8 billion people.
What we need to change is thinking to actually bridge the gap to the final bit of the emissions. We need perspective change. We need creative thinking. We need engaged citizens. When we talk about the economy and we talk about jobs and green jobs, it's very interesting when you look at what the Brookings Institute in the USA published just recently, which said that research shows that if only 16% of high school students in high and middle income countries, and I'm reading this, were to receive climate change education, we could see nearly 19 gigatons reduction of carbon dioxide by 2050.
What are some experiences of sustainable coastal tourism, and what kind of capacity building is needed to be able to foster sustainable coastal tourism management, and what are the opportunities also for education, environmental education, fostering a love for nature, understanding maybe issues of climate change, etc., for the visitors, for the tourists, for the local community. That is what we would really like to explore.
Bringing sustainability into education is one, but before that, in fact, access to education and let education continue in a meaningful manner. So we also consider that sustainability education is all about bringing quality to education, because this, when we talk about the knowledge, values, attitudes, means it all are interlinked, the overall sustainability. So that way means you get to sensitized about certain issues which impact the society.
Why I always been thinking as a teacher I was, that what can be the best tool to realize everyone what is now currently happening, and if it continues, we are going to face ire of nature. And recent report of IPCC is more scary and threatening that 20 years from now, there will be many things which will be against the human and the life.
As I said, we do have the technologies. It has been introduced to some extent depending on the state. It has been introduced in school curricula as well. But then one of the major problems is, are educators well aware of these options as well as the impact of continuing business as usual?
Education completes us, both formal and informal. It makes us the complete man. It makes us the learned person. And considering the current times, climate change education makes up for an even better one. But how many stakeholders are doing it? Real time and meaningfully. Projects across school colleges are fine. They inculcate us towards science, towards learning. But deep dive is still something that needs more attention.
We also sort of develop courses and prepare curriculum for university level students and colleges, and in partnership with the universities as well. So I mean, a decade ago we had developed a course, a master level course on climate change and impacts management, which is still being running at the Gujarat University. And we had developed the center initially, and then it went into the course formulation and how, and the first two batches were also were facilitated by the CE staff itself. Along with the courses within the formal education settings, we also developed training modules as part of our educational campaigns, which are targeted towards youth and communities from coastal, rural, and urban settings.
Because 80% of how our thing will be used and what will be thrown out is decided at the design stage. So that is also an important skill that our children need to have as future designers, that how we can make products and services more circular in future.
Education for all is what is required, but education today cannot be focused on what you call the academic issues like mathematics and reading, writing, and mathematics. That's what used to be the old education. It is now has to do with the environment protection.
it's very difficult to get roughly 200 countries to come together and work together on this issue, because every country has, different politics. It has a different culture. It has different economies and different beliefs. And so I look at this as something that is aware. It needs to be obviously educated and awareness to all, all countries and all citizens. But each country has to come to terms with it and have enough people, bringing this up to leadership to say, we really need to address this issue. So it's up to you and I and everybody in our own countries to, focus on this issue and get leadership in those countries to make it a priority.
Looking at all these things of climate change, of water, of deforestation, on how it affects the child's life. The dangers related to disasters that are getting increasingly prevalent.
We are at the crossroad of civilization, and we are facing a triple planetary crisis of climate crisis, loss of biodiversity, and pollution. The three crises are pretty interrelated, and whatever that we do to address one, we have to address the other two, because we cannot probably manage. And we talk about nature-based solution even to climate crisis and pollution these days.
I feel since I was immersed in nature, my life is very different. And I do feel that it is special because of what I was, taught as a child. So we'll explore, is there some science behind it? Is there some, research behind it? And is there some real benefit of this? And where are we today?
Nokarik National Park, Balfakram, many of you know that. So we are trying to see how do we provide connectivity between this landscape, but also to see that how we are able to strengthen the entire habitat in this landscape, so that not only the connectivities are ensured, but the entire landscape is sustainable enough to provide, ecosystem and support the biodiversity of this area.
Youth should not become activists without knowledge. They should have relevant and apt knowledge on what they are speaking, rather than becoming just activists and going ahead. They should have a very systematic knowledge on what they are speaking about ecosystem restoration or as well as climate change.